Okay, everybody, welcome back to Your Crisis Coach with Scott H. Silverman, who's late today for some reason. We'll talk about that.
Yeah,
and
we
myself. How are you, Scott?
I don't know why I'm late today. It's interesting. I went on 3 different times, and I figured you were running late, and I text you, and nothing happened. Anyway, but I'm here, and I'm so sad for what happened over the weekend in Texas and watching what's going on. It really hit me personally. I'm just thinking there's nothing I can do to help. I mean, I wish there was, other than pray. So, other than that, it took the wind out of my sails, but my health is good and started walking and, got one of our good buddies here today.
Yeah. Well, why don't you introduce him? Why don't you bring him on? He's our friend, but your friend.
Well, Jeff Johnston. Jeff Johnston. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well in 90-degree Iowa weather. It's kind of humid today.
Well, I'm really glad you're here. I'm trying to think, Jeff, you've been on with us before.
Yeah.
2022.
Back in the tour, back where we first met down in Carlsbad was when the tour ended down in 2022. So yeah, it's been three summers ago that I was insanely driving that RV around the United States.
Yeah. And you were doing nothing then and basically working 1 day a week now, just trying to not wear out that hammock, right?
Oh my gosh. Anyway, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, you've been a real inspiration to me, and the work that you've done and the stamina emotionally that you have put forth and demonstrated to others is, I think, not only contagious, but awe-inspiring. And, I would rather have you tell your story than me try to tell it. Just because I think we have a new audience. We've found a group that are in long-term corrections and can't leave. And they've got one of those transparent televisions in their cell. So we get them all together on Mondays.
Yeah, Jeff, how we use heavy metal music to drive the enemy crazy? It's similar. Very similar to that, how they use Scott and I.
I get it.
Yeah.
No,
it's interesting. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You go, man.
I was just going to say, you mentioned music, and I was just reading an article about how people who are connected to music, whether they go to, concerts or they play their, headphones or they listen to musical instruments or shows or whatever it might be, seem to have a much more balanced life, which is interesting. Because I've never been one of those kind of people that, listens to music all the time. Periodically, I get in moods and I run it for, I may hear the same song 30, 40 times and listen to it day after day. But anyway, but back to you, Jeff. So, we don't get a chance to physically spend much time together because I know we're both busy in our missions. But I would like you to share today a little bit about who you are, because those new listeners I know are going to be impressed. And then, of course, the work you do, and then maybe a progress report, an update of what's going on, because I know you've developed an app and you're all over social media and you're meeting all these famous people and going places that I don't want to go to or I've never been. But anyway, I'm really glad you're here. I want to welcome you back. And I'm glad that you jumped in. We had a cancellation today, and I appreciate you saying yes quickly and carving out the time. So, brother, good to see you. Love you. And I'm glad you're back. So tell us who you are. I'm going to light my cigar just to irritate you.
Oh, man, you're killing me. I'm going to have one right after this. Well, first of all, I'm Jeff Johnston from Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and I'm the CEO and founder of Brighton. That's what I do now. People ask me a lot, what do I do? And it's like, I don't really know what I do. I just do. And I really mean that sincerely, because I never made honor roll in high school. I played 2 sports in college. So I just, everything I did was exerted through my sports, and just, I had lots of energy and so forth. So I never had that problem, but lack of focus. I got in trouble quite a bit, became an alcoholic, or I hate that term. I had a poor relationship with alcohol from 18, and I'll talk about when I decided to stop, but what I did is I had a life between 23 and, say 50, where I was in the wealth management business. And that's what I really liked. I mean, making money, who doesn't like that? But there was something about that lifestyle, Scott and Fred, that, in hindsight, now I look back and I don't think they're wasted years, which is actually a great song by Iron Maiden, by the way, Fred. So, but I don't think they're wasted years. I think they're tuition, like life tuition. Like sometimes you have to go through things that you thought, like the illusion of things you thought were important in your life, and then something happens. And in my case, it was death, and it made me realize that I needed to change directions in my life. And instead of being a consumer of other people, I wanted to be a inspiration and empower people to improve their lives. And that all changed for me on October 4th of 2016, when I was just scooting along life. I was checking all the boxes that I had as a goal when I was a young man, and the house, the car, the traveling to Europe with my beautiful wife and 3 boys, and just everything's going good, right? And my drinking really wasn't a problem until it becomes a problem, like most people that you guys talk with every day. And that particular day started out like any other day, but it changed pretty quickly in the morning. I got a call that every parent dreads, and unfortunately, Scott, Fred, you guys know many people that get this call. Matter of fact, 909 Americans every day get this call, and that's being told that your loved one is dead from, in my case, it was an overdose, poisoning, murder. I don't really care what people call it anymore. The bottom line is that our oldest son, Seth, was found dead in a hotel room. Fentanyl was what robbed him, but it was really addiction and substance misuse and mental health and all these things. And fentanyl just, was what took his life. And if it wasn't been fentanyl, it would have been something else, a drunk driving or, some drug deal gone bad. It was just the road he was on, unfortunately, is paved with, many lost souls. And Seth at 23 lost his life. And that really, as you can imagine, when you bury a child, it just shakes you to the core. And I realized very quickly that I could have been a better dad. So I went down the road of a lot of guilt and shame that I think every parent does when you lose a child, especially a younger child that, his prefrontal cortex wasn't even fully formed yet. And as I was chasing success and fame, and I had a TV show, I had a radio show, I had all these things that everyone thought I was this great, addition to the community. I could have been a better dad, and about a year of beating myself up, I decided to sink that ship and gave myself some grace and mercy, and started focusing on my wife. Because what was happening, Scott and Fred, was after Seth died, my wife and I committed to staying home and working on my mental wellness. And all I did is just stay home and got drunker. I was already a drunk. And now that Seth died, I was like beating myself up and saying that I had a lot of responsibility and culpability in this. And my drinking got worse, and so did my wife, Prudence. And then finally, like a lot of people Scott, that you work with every day, you have that epiphany moment, right? And I looked in the mirror, and I noticed my wife, who was 9 years younger than me, she looked 9 years older than me, like in a matter of a year. And her alcoholism, her grief, her trauma, prescription addiction. And I thought, well, I couldn't save Seth. Maybe I can save my wife. Maybe I can save this ship before it sinks. I had 2 other boys. They were 13 and 15 when Seth died. So I quit drinking on December 24th of 17, guys. And I'm not going to lie. To me, it's been the easiest thing I've ever done in my life. As a full-blown alcoholic for 30-something years, you bury a child. If you look at giving up alcohol as a sacrifice, you're looking at it the wrong way. I got my life back. I didn't sacrifice anything. Sacrifice implies that I gave up something. When you stop drinking, you don't give up anything. You get a life back. And I deserve to have the ability to think clearly and to be a good husband and a good dad to my other 2 boys. But unfortunately, it didn't help my wife. And on June 29th, so just a few days ago, was the 4-year anniversary. My lovely wife, Prudence, drank herself to death, and she died at age 46. Which again was the second time now death comes into my life and just says, Jeff, you think you got things under control, but I'm going to remind you that you don't. I'm going to take someone that you care about. What are you going to do about it? That's what I told myself. And so maybe it's a little stoicism. Maybe it's a little reframing. I have to look at it this way because if I didn't, I was going to join them. And that Christmas when my wife died, I don't want to forget about my mom. She died 3 months after my wife. So I had this black cloud of death. I sat in my closet with a gun to my head, Scott. I shared this with you before. This wasn't too long ago, guys. This was 4 years ago. I sat in my closet with a gun to my head and telling myself death can't be worse than living. And I think people that have taken their life, that's the culmination of just years of suffering and pain. And I didn't want to die. I just didn't want to live. Does that make sense? I mean, that's where I was. And sometimes I jokingly say this when I speak. I said it the other day when I was speaking in Oklahoma City. Maybe I did pull that trigger, and this is the afterlife. Maybe my afterlife was meant to be an advocate for mental wellness, and maybe my afterlife was to quit everything and dedicate my life to this app. Maybe this is the afterlife, and if it is, I'm okay with it. But because I don't know how I didn't do it. I was so in pain. I was so in suffering. And so that is a silver lining for anyone watching this podcast right now that is in the depths of despair, that has the abyss like literally staring at them. Listen, if I can do it, man, so can you. I'm just this average dude in Iowa. I'm no rock star. I'm not an expert in this shit. But if I can survive and not just survive, but actually, in some sense, thrive, so can you. And that's really the story, I think, guys. I'm trying to tell people out there. I don't want to compare grief. And there's people out there who have lost their only 2 boys. I still have 2 of my 3 here. I mean, I still have Brighton. I mean, man, after Seth died, his daughter was born. I've got this beautiful 8-year-old. And I'm lucky on so many counts, but I'm not going to lie. I fight every day. And I know there's a lot of people watching this that fight every day, and it's okay. It's okay to fight. It's okay to struggle. And sometimes I just try to make it to noon, but I'm 59. I'd like to think I got a lot of good years ahead of me. I'll just say this and I'll stop rambling, but if you think about adversity and resiliency and living an undeterred lifestyle, all 3 of us have survived 100% of the worst thing that's ever happened to us over our lifetime. We're all 3 batting 1,000 right now. Those are pretty good odds. That gets you in the Hall of Fame in every sport. You're MVP of every sport. So what makes you think you can't survive the next? And that's kind of the mindset I've tried to develop over these years. And yeah, I'd like to have my family back. I'd like to go back to that point in time when I'd even go back to being an alcoholic to have them back, to be honest with you. Obviously I would, but so that's my story. But in between all this, guys, I wrote a book, I do a podcast, I did this tour, I met you, Scott, Fred, I've had a chance to meet you, so many other just amazing people. The universe just plops into my life. And I keep thinking, maybe my story, one person hears it and thinks, you know what? Jeff's right. He is just an average guy, but so am I. If he can do it, I can too. Like I said, when I first started, I don't know what I'm doing half the time. I get up and sometimes I can't get out of bed. I just tell myself, just keep moving like a shark. Just keep moving. Don't settle, because the minute you settle, you start dying, and I don't want to die yet. So
Jeff, in the scheme of things, are the other 2 boys, obviously you're not the only one that lost you lost a son and your wife. They lost their mother and brother. How did it affect their lives?
Oh man, that's a good question. It's hard. My dad's 93, guys, and he's still here. I mean, they don't have a mom, and the memories they had ended so bad because she was not her. The last couple of years of her life, she was something I didn't even know who she was, and so their memories are, recency bias. They remember the most recent memories of their mom, and they weren't good.
So not only do they not have a mom, that the memories are poor, and my heart goes out to them. Losing an older brother, I look up to my 2 older brothers. They're still alive. It's like, what's fair about this? But you go, nothing fair is about life. They are handling this in their own separate ways. My youngest is probably having the hardest time. On top of all this, Roman came out as a gay man. I think he had just told his mom before she died. So he's fighting the discrimination and, the challenges of being a gay man in this country that seems like there's some places that he feels like he can't go now, which is really sad. I don't think that's true, but that's what he believes. My middle son, Ian, is doing great things with his retail shoe store and donating money to nonprofits. And so they're both doing the best they can. And I've learned a lot from them, guys. Or Fred, I appreciate the question. I've learned a lot from them. But they see me struggle, and I think it's okay. I try to normalize it in our family, to have these conversations, because I think that's how we get past some of the big problems we have with the way everything's pathologized today and labeled and diagnosed. And so we can sell more drugs and keep people addicted to that hamster wheel of big pharma, which is really where my son's issue started, guys. Was Adderall at 15 for attention deficit disorder. That started this whole damn thing for me. Was a doctor telling my son he had to take this pill or he'd eat his friends at midnight. He'd be a werewolf or something. And I believed it. And that started everything for him. He never, ever should have been prescribed watered down methamphetamines. That's exactly where I went back and thought, where did this all start? It was 15 years old. Adderall. That's where it started.
Yeah, it's a tough story, man. It is. Even since the last, we have so many in common things here beyond, my ex-wife passed due to addiction. In the time since the time we spoke, and my daughter found her. My daughter found her and stuff. So I deal with it, but I also have a gay son who lives out in Salt Lake City. And I dealt with that also. First of all, I have zero problem with it at all. It doesn't bother me one bit. Never has.
Me too.
But it's hard for me to give them advice on everything because I'm not a gay man. I don't know what the struggle is. I'm not a gay man, and the only thing I keep telling him, I preach it is, he's in his 30s and he's married, but just be happy. Don't worry about all this outside noise. Yeah. Go be happy. Keep as much privacy as you need, but just go be a happy man. That's all you have to be. And that's what I try to preach. So, Scott, you got anything to add to this, my friend? This is the longest you've been quiet.
I know, and it's unfortunate. It's unfortunate because, with my 8-second attention span, there's a couple things I forgot that I wanted to ask. But I wanted to, and thanks for sharing that, Jeff. I think that's important for people to hear. They're not alone. And thank you, Fred. So, Jeff, you said something early in your share about you don't. I think I'm going to hopefully get this right. You don't like the word alcoholic. Did I hear you say that?
Yeah, okay. I don't like sobriety. I don't like alcoholic. And I'd say the reason why, Scott, is and I write about this. I write about this in my book. I just use a metaphor or an analogy, whatever you want to call it. So let's say that I am 100 pounds overweight and I go to a fat anonymous group, and there's a bunch of people in a church, and we all sit around, and I send them, and I'm Jeff, I'm fat, and I'm happy to be here. And then you stand up, hey, I'm Scott, I'm fat, I'm happy to be here. And then we come back, 6 months later, and I've lost all this weight. Well, I'm not going to stand up and say, hey, I'm Jeff, I'm fat, even though I was fat. And so again, I'm not a clinician. I don't understand all this stuff. But when I was thinking about my sober journey and I decided to stop drinking, I thought, you know what? I'm not an alcoholic, nor am I fat, nor am I all these things that I used to be. So why would I just say, hi, I'm Jeff, I'm an alcoholic? And I understand the AA mindset, the utility of it, the kind of like you have to kind of succumb and powerless to all that. I get all that. I'm just saying for Jeff Johnston, that lane didn't work for me. So I'm not an alcoholic, as I'm not fat, and for that same reason, that's why I don't even say sober anymore, Scott. I'm pragmatic. I learned that from my doctor dad. I just don't drink. And if I say I'm sober, that implies I'm in some fight. And I don't drink, just like I don't eat fried food, just like I don't eat cheese, just like I don't smoke pot. I mean, it's like, so for me, I wanted to be consistent in all that. But so that's why. And again, I'm not, like I said, never made honor roll in high school. I'm not super smart. I don't want to overthink it. And if I consider myself sober, then I'm literally like admitting that there's some fight. I mean, if I did drink, I wouldn't even consider myself falling off the wagon. I would just give myself grace and mercy and say, I drank today. And I don't keep score. I know what day I quit. I don't know how many days it's been. So I've just kind of done this really weird game I played with my lizard brain that I'm just not going to play the normal, like I'm a tortured soul and held powerless to alcohol. And, I talk to people, Scott, that go to AA and they think I'm crazy. They're like, no, you are an alcoholic. You're just in denial. And I'm like, well, that's okay. Whatever you think. I'm not going to drink whether you call me an alcoholic or not, And if I did, I know for certain if I did, I'd be a little let down, but I certainly wouldn't go in panic mode and go on social media and say, oh my God, I fell off the wagon. And I would just say, dude, you've been through a lot. Give yourself a break. You did 8 years. Just do another 8. I
asked you the question because, I go to a meeting every day, 7 days a week. And
I know you do. We talked about that.
Since COVID. And I introduced myself as an addict and alcoholic.
Yeah.
And I never judge anybody because my attitude is if you're on a path that you've chosen and it works for you, you should continue on that path.
Amen.
But what's interesting is, to your point, that's why I wanted to ask you about it. There is science around. And by the way, I'm not a clinician and I'm not a doctor, but I'm considered a subject matter expert.
Right.
And it's because of my lived experience and the time I've had doing what I'm doing. And by the way, I'm going to anoint, is that the word? Anoint you today that you are, you don't think of yourself as an expert, but based on experientially what you've done, what you've been through, what you're doing and how you're thinking about it, in many ways makes you more of an expert because you're not following the DSM-5 guideline, which they only really update every 3 or 4 years. And the think tank that does that, I don't even know who they are. They call them that, those people, and they're in this friggin' motorhome. Forgive me, but motorhomes driving around. No one's actually met them. So my point is, there's science that says if you get up each day and you introduce yourself, to your point, as an alcoholic, as an addict, as a gambler, as someone who suffers from, overdone debt, food, sex, internet, whatever, gambling, that there's a negative reinforcement that goes into that prevents the untreated trauma in many cases, unless you're really working outside of the rooms to work on, that ultimately it because there's a huge relapse rate. And there's no real science as to why that happens other than someone has a disease of the brain. But the biggest and most common comparison to addiction, if you will, is the disease of addiction. And I believe it's a disease for those of us who, are wired that way, that diabetes is the most comparable disease to it. And you don't hear people talk about introducing themselves as a diabetic. And you have tools that you get with diabetes that allow you to live a long life. The interesting, I think, carve out for anonymous meetings is everyone believes the secret sauce is in the room. But I can tell you, without disclosing anything, what percentage of the people I know take some form of medication, because once you remove the anesthesia, the drinking, the using, whatever it is you're doing, the underlying mental health issues evolve. And if they're not processed correctly with the right tools, in many ways, you're not going to get better if you don't get meditating, you don't do exercise, you don't do diet change. Maybe you need some anti-anxiety medication for a while. Maybe you need some sleep support, whatever it is, and then you taper down and go off of it, or some people stay on a certain low dose. So my point is, I think you've got a very valid point, and I don't talk about it in my meetings because it usually irritates people, and then I get little chats, don't go there. And I'm not even supposed to introduce myself as an addict and alcoholic. And the reason I use both is because I was poly-drugged and I drank all the time, and I could never have a drink.
Yeah, me neither.
If I had a drink, because the science is, after 40 years, if I had a drink today, my body, my mind, the disease wouldn't recognize that, and it would think that I've been drinking this whole time. So I would basically, go right
I know
back to
for
where I
sure,
was.
Scott, that had I not stopped drinking, I would have pulled that trigger in my closet 100%. So not drinking not only allows me to honor my son and my wife, because that's one way that I look at it. It saved my life, not my liver, not all the other stuff, but it literally saved my life because I was able to sit in my pain in that closet for a whole weekend with a loaded gun. And I know that I can make it through the next time I get that dark and the abyss shows up on my front porch. I know I can, if I can last that closet, I can last anything. And I say that knocking on wood because I sure don't want death. I don't to take any more people I care about. I'm kind of would hope it just leaves me alone and doesn't go anywhere else. But I'm just kind of that 5-year block of my life was hard to lose a son, my wife, and my mom all in 5 years, as I'm battling my own demons. So I think there's lessons in all these stories. And I think as you get older, simple math just says you're going to start losing people you care about. Mine just was in an odd order, son, wife, mom. Most people it's the other way around. So death doesn't always just come in a convenient order. But there's, we're all going to lose that fight against death. It's just a matter of how we can have a reverence towards, I guess. So I think what death has taught me is the beauty of living and to be in awe of the struggle, I guess, as the Stoics would say, or as Viktor Frankl wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, suffering is my opportunity. I love that phrase. And I actually recoined it as is pain is unavoidable, suffering is a choice. So pain is unavoidable, suffering is a choice is kind of a great way to tell yourself a situation that you're in that's very difficult to handle. Just say the pain I feel of losing somebody I care about is absolutely unavoidable. But had the length of time I choose to suffer is a choice. It really is. I don't think pain is. But, so I do suffer, but the intensity and the duration is substantially less. But man, when it's dark, I'm not going to lie, guys, it's dark. And as a man that's 59, I check all the boxes. I'm fully aware of that. The highest suicide rates in the country are white middle-aged men, for percentage, not numbers. And, I'm fully aware of that. And I meditate half an hour every morning. I don't watch any TV. I don't follow any politics. That stuff just irritates me to all ends. I'm secular, so I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. But I will say something, and I don't know if this is appropriate, Scott. I don't know your position on this, but here we go. I'll throw it out there for your audience to decide. I've been introduced to psychedelic assisted therapy the last 3 years, and some of the people in the community are really, I'll say, big time advocates in the alcohol space, like they're keynote speakers and stuff, and they are behind the scenes involved in psychedelic assisted therapy, and they're very worried about it getting out. And I'm like, that's a stigma I'm trying to bring to the forefront, that again, psychedelics are a pathway. For me, I've never felt addicted. I know some people that, and some of these people too, Scott, and I won't say their name, but they won't do psychedelic assisted therapy because they're really afraid it's going to trigger them. And as we say in the space or in the community, the plants will tell you if it makes sense. And So I've really benefited from it. And that's one of the reasons why I have this really cool tattoo I got last Monday, is one of my journeys I was on. So not to like throw a wrench to this podcast today, but I think for me at 59, this isn't about Seth. This isn't about Prudence. This isn't about you guys. This is about my mental health and about my journey and the limited time I have on the earth. And when you're sitting there in a closet with a gun to your head, you never want to go back to that spot. And when I was introduced psychedelics as a way to avoid that spot, I jumped on it because the other options weren't attractive to me. Going back to drinking or smoking pot or doing things like that, or being depressed or going on SSRIs. Those are things that I didn't want to do. And so I think there's room for lots of different areas. I think meditation and breath work are huge. Those are not psychedelic experiences. And I know a lot of people that are like heavy breath work, Scott, like they're intense breath work for an hour. And to them, it's like, there's nothing on the planet that would make them feel any better. And then meditation is another part of my, my repertoire that I add every day that gets me to stop the monkey mind just flying and flying and flying and creating all these scenarios of future events that probably aren't going to be as bad as I envision them to be, whether they're financial or deals that we're trying to broker on the app. I just, I think we're wired to tell ourselves negative stories all the time. And I don't know, man. I feel at 59, I am I'm so humbled and so like liberated from the prison I had built around me all these years. And yeah, it took death for me to really appreciate life, but would I go back to being miserable and 190 pounds and a drunk to have my wife and my son back? Yeah, I would, honestly. But I'd like to take the wisdom with me. I'd like to take...
That might change a couple of things.
It would change a lot of things. It would change a lot of things. But yeah, so...
You want me to respond to your reveal?
I do, man. I don't know if I've ever shared that with you, but I value as a good friend, and you and I have talked many times. I know you've talked to me
I've always
a few times.
I've always wondered how you've done it. So, first of all, my feeling about it is, if the tool works for you, you should use the tool.
Mm-hmm.
And I think probably the only thing, because I was a huge hallucinogen consumer, mescaline, LSD, mushrooms.
While you were drinking?
But those were some of the stronger drugs you could get, and the way they make things today are different. And under a monitored and supervised way, we're just casually doing it. So I don't judge you. I think, when people ask me what my opinion is, and I get asked a lot, my answer is, look, I know people that have been on methadone for 20 years. And they go, well, isn't that, synthetic heroin? I said, well, some people may say that, and it can be, referred to as that. But if that's keeping somebody off of heroin, which technically would kill them over time, then medication assisted treatment in the last 15 years has really grown to the point that some municipalities won't even fund publicly financed service providers who do substance use disorder treatment if they don't use MAT, medication assisted treatment, harm reduction.
Wow. Yeah.
And so I think
it's a slippery slope, isn't it?
Well, there was a big thing in Oregon. I think was one of the first states that really, and they were having these weekend seminars, because I got invited to one for $7,000. I could become a hallucinogen administrator. Well, that was not my gig. I mean, I don't do that. I'm not a clinical person, so it wasn't interesting for me to do that. But the science around it shows that for people who are able to do it in a way, and it works for them, and it is supervised by the right people, it's a great tool. I mean, I actually have a family member that's on it.
Texas just passed this big ibogaine. I think it was $55 million or something to set aside for specifically for veterans and PTSD. But I think my conversations with some of these advocates, and I could 5 name drop for you, Scott, and you know who I'm talking about. These are pretty well-known people. Yeah. Is that if you are worried that this may trigger you or you become addicted, then by all means, that worry is justifiable. if you're even considering that. I went into it, that was the least of my concerns. My concerns was suicide. That I was more concerned about that than getting addicted, because it doesn't matter if I'm dead.
If it's a lifesaver for people, why would you not allow them to do that? Look, in the rooms, a lot of people don't think that you should be on any kind of, SSRI, antidepressant, anti-anxiety medication. And, when I've seen people suffer and they're going, well, I'm going to 5 meetings a day. And it's like, I can't sleep at night. I feel like I'm, they call it a dry drunk. Because the enough breathing and meditation and reading and being on your knees and spirituality, or even being a triad, whatever it is, it doesn't mean the opaque part of the mental health piece is being addressed.
Right.
So there are a lot of purists out there, but at the end of the day, only 10% of the people who suffer from addiction seek help, and of those, up to 95% will relapse. So clearly, we're not really moving the needle, but it is a program that's global, that anybody can walk in. And if you have a desire to stop, you're welcome. And some people are just so lonely, kind of like the rat park experiment that, I
know that quite well. That's free. That's
if you're in a safe place and you're with people you can trust. And look, one of the greatest things I heard when I first got sober was, we will love you until you can love yourself. Because I had no idea how to do anything.
Well, you bring up a good point. You bring up a good point. For anybody watching this podcast, there's nothing more helpless feeling than trying to help somebody that does not want to get helped. And that is hands down the most frustrating thing. When I watched my son and my wife, I kept telling him, this is predictable and it's preventable, but until you see it that way, there's nothing I'm going to do to get you to quit. And
and it's a disease of denial. It's a disease of denial. So the brain's telling them, I'm okay. If you would just listen better, or, make the quesadillas differently, or cook the spaghetti sauce longer, or if I had this issue more under control, or that's the disease of the mind. And you mentioned veterans, coming out of, active duty and with PTSD, they actually haven't found anything other than putting somebody on heavy doses of, antidepressants. And that doesn't really address PTSD. It just puts them in a numb state, just like Oxycontin did for people with pain. The science showed after years of study, it doesn't really address the pain in the brain after a short period of time. So I think people have to do what they have to do. But going to a professional to have them oversee it is what I guide people on.
I think the biggest thing it did for me, guys, the biggest thing it did for me is it really allowed me to sit where I needed to sit and not mask it, not, kick it down the road, because it just opened up these pathways in my mind, or my, conscious experience, that I couldn't hide from. I couldn't hide behind an SSRI. I couldn't hide behind a therapist. I had to just sit in, as I say, my shit. I just figure it out. And that's what it did. It forced me to do that. And for me, for Jeff Johnston, I needed that. I needed the universe to kick me in the ass and to tell me there's a better way to live my life, and to turn this in as things happen for you, not to you. And until I did that, I was just torturing myself in this negative self-talk, and this just massive, insane loop that I couldn't get out of. And alcohol wasn't going to help. I knew I wasn't going to go back to drinking. I didn't want to go see a therapist because, and again, you guys, Scott, you probably can answer this for me. I have this bias, very unfair to therapy. I'll tell you right now, I'm wrong, but this is my opinion. Unless I can sit across this table to someone that's been through what I've been through, I'm going to have a hard time unloading on somebody. If someone says, yeah, Jeff, I know what you're talking about. My son died, my wife or my dad or my brother or whatever. Someone can actually relate to what I'm going through. It doesn't have to be everything, but just, I can't sit and talk to a therapist who's happily married with 3 kids. For me, I'm just going to be talking to a brick wall. Now, I know that's probably not fair. I know a lot of therapists probably would just love the opportunity to talk to me that have happy families and all that. And that's great. I don't know if I'd be open to that. And again, this is about me, not about the therapist. And I don't know if I'd be open to that. And that's not fair to the therapist. So I've not found anybody yet that other than other advocates, Scott, to be honest with you, I talk all day to these moms and dads that have lost people, and that's my therapy. That's why I don't go to therapists, because I'm doing this. This is a great conversation. This is a great way for me to talk to two people I respect. I do this 4 or 5 times a day. I don't know if there's anything left for me to go talk to a therapist, because I'm so vulnerable to everybody all day long. And so that's my thing on therapy. So again, you've hit the nail on the head a couple times. It's whatever pathway, whatever thing you've kind of worked through. If it keeps working for you, whether it's God or if it's, psychedelics or if it's sobriety, or I don't care, exercise or a cigar at night. I have a cigar and I drink NA wine. I argue with people in AA, don't do NA wine. It's a trigger. And I'm like, for you, it's not for me. None of this stuff. The only thing that triggers me in the last 30 days was hearing my wedding song at dinner, man. It just killed me. It just absolutely killed me. That's the last time I've been triggered on anything, was hearing our wedding song. And other than that, it takes a lot to trigger me.
Yeah, I agree. I have some agreements with you on the therapy side of things. I'm not Scott has talked to me about that and stuff. And it might be our age range, because you and I are in that similar age range. We're still, whether we want to admit it or not, we're still fighting that stigma of men aren't allowed to do this, men aren't allowed to do that. It's been hammered into our head our whole life. Mm-hmm. Boys don't cry, they don't do this, they don't do that, they don't ask for help. Mm-hmm. You do strike me as somebody, Jeff, that is a problem solver, but you do it in private. You're still in that closet in a metaphorical way.
Yeah, I am. Yeah.
And you're always solving that problem. And yeah, I agree with you. And I also agree that you're wrong. That, of course, there's therapists out there. We're aware of that. Sometimes we could also say that, and we're aware they're educated and they've been through, maybe it's a similar case as yours.
Right. Good point.
And that's educational, because they saw what worked for that person versus that. So of course we're wrong, but I think it's more important that you speak the truth, and you're just speaking your truth, and I also am aware that Scott was going to answer that question the way he did, because Scott's so fair and consistent with his whatever works. That's all he cares about. What's working.
Yeah.
He, until it's not working, of course, when laws are passed like Oregon and stuff like that. Yeah. He's fine with it until it's not working. Now let's find a new
pivot. Then you pivot. Yeah.
But he's very comfortable with, he's never told a guest once. We've had guests on that smoke pot still. We've had guests on that psychedelic drugs and stuff. He's never naysayed them. He'll give whatever, if he's asked a question, he'll give his opinion and he'll be honest, but he'll never tell you, if it's working for you, to stop doing it.
Well, Scott, I was at a conference, and it's a large national organization, and it's a recovery conference. And I remember going out for dinner with some of the recovery advocates there, and they're ordering beers and stuff, some of them. And they're like, yeah, I still drink. And I'm like, for me, it didn't bother me. I'm like, I respect that. You can be a recovery advocate, and you can have, a good friend of mine, Charlie Engel, who's a very well-spoken recovery advocate out there in alcoholic space specifically, and I guess drugs too as well. He says the definition of, and someone asked him, what's an alcoholic? And he says, when whatever you're doing ceases to serve you, then you are that, then you're an alcoholic or you're a drug addict or whatever. If it ceases to serve you. So if you can have a beer on a Friday night, one beer, and it doesn't cause any who's to tell you that you can't do that? Right. And so you are an alcoholic now because you had one beer. So what? If it doesn't serve you negatively or anyone in your life, then who's to tell you that you aren't an alcoholic? And if you are an alcoholic, I guess that's why I hate labels. That's why I hate these labels, because they carry so much weight and so much burden on them and so much judgment. And, if I went out with you, Scott, and you're having a cigar and you want to have a glass of Cabernet and you want to tell everybody that you don't drink, I'm fine with that. Jeff Johnston is fine with that. Most people in the recovery community would not be fine with that. And that's their choice. And if Scott had 3 or 4 and fell over backwards and we carried out to this car, then I would say, Scott, that's a problem. You now have a problem. So it's like, I think there's something going on. I saw the balloon.
What are you doing, Scott?
I didn't do that.
Where did that come from?
I mentioned falling over backwards and he put up balloons. So
Really? You didn't do that, Fred?
No,
I didn't do it either.
Maybe it was a word that he used or something. My hands are busy.
It's like
that's weird. Weird. You didn't do.
No, I didn't do it,
Fred. You did.
But I'm so intrigued on people's belief structure in this space, because I don't really see a lot of hypocrisy, but I do see some people that if other people knew that they do occasionally have a drink, they would feel they would lose their street cred in the industry. And again, that's a stigma being perpetuated, because each pathway is our own pathway. Now, am I going to drink? No, I'll be shocked if it's too it's too easy for me not to drink now. I think drinking would be too much work. So, it's like the road of least resistance is how most of us live our life right now. The road to least resistance is not drinking for me. It'd be too much work to drink. So what does all that mean, and how does this conversation help people? I think if you are worried that alcohol will no longer serve you, then your body's telling you and your mind's telling you and your soul's telling you that you probably made the right decision not drinking, but you're the only one to tell.
That's assuming, Jeff, and that's assuming that, you don't unfortunately expire because you don't make that decision soon enough. But, speaking of making decisions soon enough, we're kind of wrapping up for time, and I want to give you an opportunity to talk about your app and your new business and what's going on with that. Nonprofit, right? You're a nonprofit.
It's a for-profit, actually.
Okay.
I have a nonprofit called the Living Undeterred Project, but nonprofits, I feel real constrained with, finding money and just some of the limitations. And so as an entrepreneur, I decided to do a startup company called Brighton, which is actually the name of Seth's daughter. So when my son died 3 weeks later, his daughter was born. I named this Brighton because, what a name. Her name could have been Diane or Linda or Scott or Fred, but it was Brighton. It's like, what a name for a startup that's based on empowerment, love, and courage. And so our app is focused on this intersection of health, wealth, and purpose. So as an advocate, I got into the mental health space. I realized everything was very episodic. Like, your son has a problem, take him to the doctor, they walk out with a label and a bottle, and that's how it works. If your son doesn't have a problem, you just cross your finger, hope that they don't have problems. And I'm like, there's got to be another way that we can look at this to empower people, the 4 out of 5 that are not in crisis mode, to keep them from being the 1 in 5 that get in crisis mode. And I didn't want to just build a telehealth app. My legacy, Scott, wasn't to build an app where I would introduce your kids to go to a doctor to get a label and a bottle of Adderall. That's not my legacy. So Brighton is predicated on empowerment, and it's kind of this idea of, I used to do financial planning. It's the idea of what I call mental wellness planning. And so we have a very AI-powered, I think a very fresh approach to this whole mental wellness challenge that we have with social media and post-COVID, with loneliness, and some of the partnerships that we have in this space validates to us that what we've built is necessary, and it's definitely something that's in demand. We aren't telehealth. We aren't really prevention, Scott, because, going around and telling people don't do drugs or you'll die, there's no love in that story. I did that, man. You know me. When I met you, I was angry fentanyl dad. My whole talk was predicated on just telling people don't do drugs, you'll die. And I'm sitting in my car going, dude, there's no love in you're just an angry old guy. You're just out there scaring people to change their behavior. And that's short-term effective. I think kids will probably listen to me at an assembly, but by Friday night, they're out drinking and smoking pot again. So, Seth's death isn't going to change anyone's behavior. But if I could somehow find a way to not scare them, but to fill them up with love, hope, and inspiration, that there's really great reasons to live, not just reasons to avoid death, but there's actually very good reasons to live. That's what I decided to do with the app. And that's what we did. And it's all AI powered. And, we are routinely up against some of the big boys like Calm and BetterHelp, and we keep winning these little battles. And not that we're better. I just think we're further upstream. The greatest quote I've ever heard in my life, guys, was Desmond Tutu's. And I'm sure you guys have heard this before. Maybe you didn't know he said it, but here's the quote. We need to stop pulling people out of the river and move further upstream and find out why they're falling in the first place. And I heard that like 2 years ago, Scott, and I'm like, boom, that's the lane I want to live the rest of my life. I don't want to be pulling people out of the river. It was too taxing for me. And I couldn't get my son out of the river. I couldn't get my wife out of the river, and almost didn't get me out of the river. And I'm like, all right, I got to go way upstream. I got to figure out why people are falling in the first place, whether it's childhood trauma or whatever it may be, and that's kind of what the app is all predicated on.
How can people find the app?
Well, I spelled it different. So it's BRIGHTN. So BrightonApp.com is the website. So www.BRIGHTNAPP.com. And it's about 20 cents a day. So we do have a subscription. It's very, you watch Gen Zers stand in Starbucks and they're spending $7, $8, $9 on a latte. And ours is like the cost of one latte a month. And I think our app is going to do more to your mental health than a latte will. But that's the challenge, is trying to get people to prioritize where they spend their money. And then parents can buy it for their kids. We have more adults on the app right now than kids. And we built it kind of for Gen Z. But believe it or not, the parents are using it. They're loving the AI that we built with the mood tracking and the journaling. So I'm looking for partnerships. We are still looking for investors. We have about 30% left on our pre-seed. We've got 3 really good contracts signed. So we hope to be revenue positive by the first of the year. I've bootstrapped most of this. I think I've shared that with Scott privately, but this is all I have. I mean, I've put in a lot of my liquid net worth. I don't have a plan B. I told my team when I started this project, this is going to make a difference in the world, or it's going to be the end of me. One of the two.
You're
there's no middle ground.
You're certainly an interesting man. I'll give you that.
I just do, man. That's all I do.
You've had a lot of unfortunate in your life, but you found a lot of positive in your life at the same time. It's a very intricate story. I think people, whether or not they've been through it, are compassionate to it and can feel the pain in your speech, in the way you talk and what you say. And I think they get that about you, and that's what makes you so desirable to people from a friend standpoint.
Well, I want to say something about Scott too. I've met a lot of people in this space. Scott is, and again, Scott, I mean this in all sincerity. You are in the Mount Rushmore in the respect that I have, because every time I'm in a meeting with you, you're never afraid to speak your ground. You always have very validated comments. You are very funny. But I see you as a dear friend. Like if I was back on the ledge, I know I could call you.
And I mean this honestly, I could call you anytime. And I feel that love towards you and what you're doing to help people I admire so much. And you guys give me strength. And I think that is what we all need, is to feed off each other, because my tank gets really low, as I know yours does too. And, I'm always there for you, and you are a big inspiration in my life, Scott. I just mean that sincerely. And I know you help many, many people. You're much more in the trenches than I am. I'm like pre-trenches. You're in the trenches, and I really love you and admire you, brother. And anything I can do to help what you're doing, I'm all in.
Yeah. Well, and just so you know, and thank you for that, because I heard you mention you're 59 6 times. Yeah. I don't know why I kept track. So my question is, My question is, are you bragging or complaining? You don't have to answer that. But part of the reason I have a little more experience than you is I'm 71, so I've been in the trenches.
Dude, you look great.
Long.
I mean, I thought you were like 62 or 65. 71, you look great, man. Those cigars must really be knocking some years off your life.
Like you said in the beginning, I'm still having difficulty because Truth Anonymous is a whole different meeting that I might have to get you invited to. But
you're doing a great job, and you guys, this podcast is awesome, and I know you touched the lives of a lot of people, you guys, and so I just I'm happy to add a little value today.
And we want you to help us get the word out. I mean, and by the way, one more other point, then I'm going to shut up. You said something about the example of being upstream.
Mm-hmm.
Don't cut yourself short and say that you're not into prevention, because if you're going upstream to figure it out, that's prevention. That's education.
It is.
So
it all matters.
You might need a therapist to discuss it with you, or you can call me and I'll be your crisis coach. That because at this point I've been doing it so long. People say, "Where'd you get certified?" I said, "I am grandfathered in before the term coach was even evolving outside of sports."
Yeah, I'd rather talk to you.
So let's talk about it.
Yeah.
I'll be your therapist.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
So Scott, you want to drop your phone number, Scott?
I do. I want you to call me so I can get you on the phone with Jeff. But please, 619-993-2738. And I'm going to get a phone call from you, I know, one day or another, because I promise if I can't help you, I will find someone who can.
We already have.
Excellent. Okay. Well, thank you, Jeff, for joining us. We hope you come back a third time. We'll get you. Don't worry. And thank you, Scott. And if nobody has told you they love you today, we love you. This is your crisis coach with Fred Carroll and Scott H. Silverman, or Scott H. Silverman and Fred Carroll. His name has to go first. That's in the contract. We'll hang out there for a minute.